Right. Hey, everyone. Hello, chat. Good to see you. Uh, Twitch is giving me all sorts of interesting information here. My OBS is telling me everything is good and the frames are good, and Twitch is telling me other things, but it looks like it's coming through okay, so hopefully it's coming okay for you guys as well. Back again, WindyJ, back on your screen with you. Today I was, this is an unscheduled broadcast or an unscheduled session. And it's mostly because we have in our guild today a few more DMs joining us. And so the way that the WindyJ Guild works is we're trying to help people learn how to do various things with their online D&D because let's be honest, that's in many places of the world the only way we can do it. So if you're here with me, jump into the chat, say, hey, what's up? I am gonna do the same. Hey, chat, glad to have you with me. We're also, just as a heads up as to what the plan is for the talk today, it's all about session zeros because we have a whole bunch of new DMs with us, and we're going to be having a whole bunch of DMs having to start their session zeros right about now too. So, kind of walking your way through that, especially if you've not done it before, or you've been like I have been in the past, and you've had like really bad scenarios happen because you didn't go through the session zero properly. And that's learning. That's how learning works, is you make mistakes and then you get better. Or you do some research a little bit and you get a little bit better at it too. So I have my list of things here that I think we should be talking about, and I do kind of sort of have an order, although I might jump around a little bit in it today. But we're going to first start with these are the things that I think need to be included in your session zeros. And you are welcome to jump into the chat and tell me if you think that there's something missing, or if you've had an experience with a D&D campaign that didn't go the way you were hoping it would go, and so that we can learn a little bit more about how to do this well. And you can just sit here and vibe with me and share with me some of the things that we do that we can do better. So the first one is right there. We're gonna just start. Let's just do this. Let's just go straight into this, shall we? Tech checks. The world's worst feeling is when you're about to do an online D&D game and you've got that one person you can't hear, or that one person who's talking really muffledly into their microphone because their microphone's not in the right place, or something along those lines. And sometimes you can't tell if it's you, even. Especially as a DM, that's kind of a big deal. If they don't know what you're saying, they ain't going to be playing with you. So that was words that happened. So yeah, we got to figure out a way of doing that first. So in our guild, we play everything out of Discord, but some people like to play using the voice, the WebRTC stuff that's in whatever virtual tabletop software they're using. We're using Roll20, mostly because it's simple and straightforward and lots of people can connect to it. Actually, interesting point of fact, Roll20 had a minor update to their interface today, and the interface, it's in the chat window on the right hand side. They actually have a little gearbox up there at the top corner now, which they've always had, but it looks nice. When you clicked on that gearbox, it just looked like this schmoz of settings, and now they've actually organized it with drop tabs and everything. It's actually quite nice. So Roll20, kudos to you on that update. That was definitely a good one. I still can't find everything, but that's because I'm not used to it yet, and it'll take me all of about 15 seconds to figure it out. So y'all did something right. How'd it go? And let's be honest, Roll20 is a little bit of an older system. That's probably the most common for that matter, though. But it looks a little bit on the archaic side. This little update is a good step towards making it not look anywhere near as archaic and be far easier to work with. So that was a big kudos. Nonetheless, I digress. We talk about tech. So the first thing you have to have is good audio. And this is when you get to jump into the chat and say, hey, I can't hear you, WindyJ, if that's the case. All my things here are telling me that everything's working fine, but it's all well and good for me to see it look like it's right. It's another thing for what you guys hear. So feel free to tell me. But when you first jump into your session 0 and you're on your first voice call, however that happens, whatever tool you're using, I said Discord's one that we use. Roll20 is what some people use. I also, when I'm doing the video stuff, or when I have players playing with me on video, I use Video Ninja as well. And there's plenty of others that are out there that you can use. Some people play on Zoom or Google Meets, whatever works. The key ingredient to it is audio. Audio must be clean, and you must have really good audio. So I have a microphone that's right out here. It's a little bit of a distance away because I personally don't like having my microphone in front of my face in the middle. It looks awkward, like that just probably did. But I don't like doing that. So I put my microphone a bit away from me. I do some filters to make sure that it still sounds okay. It's not the greatest, but I don't have the highest quality microphone anyway, but I get it to work. And sometimes I'll just use the drop microphone that I have on this set of headphones. I appreciate that a lot more sometimes too, simply because I don't have to worry about whether or not I can be heard, and I don't have to do as many filters. But what if you know how to use any of that stuff, right? So many of our pieces of software, they come up with a variety of different ways of messing with your audio. So like Discord has some noise suppression built in, and so sometimes you actually have to go and turn that noise suppression off. Same thing with Video Ninja, and even Zoom does that to a certain extent too. And so if you are concerned about not being able to be heard, you got to get into your audio settings of whatever software it is you are using and make sure that everything that you say is actually being heard. Otherwise, if you have, and sometimes you can actually turn your noise suppression up just a little bit too high, and then you end up with some of your words being clipped out, especially if you start to talk really quiet, then through that quietness, it doesn't work, right? Hey, chat! Got some more people in there jumping in. Feel free to talk to me about any of the tech challenges that you've had while you're playing. My biggest tech challenge was always the audio, and I think I finally got a solution that I'm pretty happy with. I don't exactly sound like I've been caught by a condenser mic in a TV studio, but I'm understandable. I think. And nobody's complained to me about it in the past couple of sessions, so I feel like I've got a hit there. But it's because I manage those noise suppression things. So if you're using Video Ninja, you should seriously consider getting rid of that noise suppression for at least for you, if not for the other characters, and then trying to get rid of the background noise as well for everybody if possible. But that audio, it's killer. If you don't have good audio, you can't do online games. It just doesn't work. It doesn't matter what fancy schmancy rainbow colored scales you put onto your Twitch stream, it doesn't matter. The audio gots to be good. So that's it. Mic checks, and let's include on that. Actually, I'm gonna just keep myself some notes here too. Mic checks, noise suppression. There's another thing that some people aren't familiar with yet. They're called noise gates. I can't type. Look at that. So a noise gate, the concept of a noise gate is that it doesn't actually allow your microphone to send any sound through until you get past a certain decibel threshold. And so if you're talking really quietly, your noise gate might not actually pick up your voice. Or if you happen to have your microphone down underneath your chin, it might not pick up your voice or up in the wrong spot. So getting that microphone placement sometimes helps, but you also want to check to see if there's any noise gates in the software you use. Discord has a noise gate. It basically just looks like this little meter that you can see your audio bumping up and down on, and then it has a little slider on it if you put it on the advanced setting, and you can move that to make sure that whatever fan noise you have from your computer or your room doesn't get picked up, but you still have to talk strongly enough that you can be heard. If you're on Discord, you can and you've got somebody who talks super quietly, you can actually turn their volume up and down. You can do it on Video Ninja as well. It's harder to do that on things like Zoom, but it is possible. But you can actually do that on an individual basis too. So I have one game where no matter what I do, I end up having that one person that has a really soft volume. And so I'll actually go onto their icon in my Discord voice chat, right click on it and adjust the volume for that one person so I can hear it. And if I adjust it for myself, then it means that it doesn't impact all the others. It only impacts me, and sometimes it is only me that seems to experience it. If it's everybody's that's experiencing it, then you should probably ask that person just to turn their microphone up. The other tech check you have is video. Video, I personally play with video. I like playing with video because a lot of the role playing that I do requires the understanding of facial expressions and gestures and such, and so I need that. If I don't have those kinds of things, it makes it difficult, but that's just me. Some people are much better at theater of the mind than I am, I guess. But it matters to have good quality video while you're doing the game as well, if you're going to do that. And if you've got somebody who doesn't have a strong enough internet connection or a strong enough GPU on their computer, and they are trying to play with video, maybe you should change your mind and just go without the video for a bit. And see if you can go without it at all, if at all possible, because you're more interested in actually playing the game than having to deal with the tech. But video is the only other thing that's ever given me hassle. That being said, when it comes down to the video, if the video is not working, then I just stop all the video and I play the game. We're supposed to be having fun with these games, right? So with my the Wild Beyond Witchlight game, which is actually set in a different setting, most of the time the videos come across pretty nicely. They work pretty okay. But I do have in my Sunken Citadel game one person whose video just never seems to work, and rather than frustrate them over whether or not that's gonna work for them, I just let them go without the video. I let them just kind of listen in and use their microphone only. We want to make sure that they can still participate without having to frustrate over tech. Because if you're frustrating over tech, you're certainly not role-playing, and that's no sort of fun. And that is the first thing I would do on any sessions here. The first time I'm meeting my players as a DM, I'm going to spend some time. I'm going to say, hey, guys, let's just take a few moments. Let's make sure everybody's microphones are working. Person one, could you please do some talking for me? You listen to it. How did that sound for everybody? Cool, great. Let's move on to the next person. And then you help them adjust their microphones, help them get their level set so that everybody is happy with what they hear. It's super important when you're playing online games. If you're not playing online games, then your tech check's not usually quite so considerable. But these are usually the things that you want to watch out for. That noise suppression, noise gates, those are usually the things. Chat, feel free to jump in. Tell me if you know of any other tech issues that you can imagine coming up. I guess one other tech issue I can think of is the Roll20 stuff. If you're doing online virtual tabletops or Foundry or whatever tabletop you're using, how are you going to make sure that everybody can enjoy doing that? For me, I haven't had too many problems with players being able to do the Discord chats or the Video Ninja chats with the video on as well as doing Roll20. I haven't had that too many issues with it. There's sometimes been a bit of lag, but it's not too considerable. But about a year and a half ago, when I was doing a West March campaign, that was very much a problem. That Roll20 was super laggy for some people. And so how do you get it so that everybody can see it? Well, sometimes it's easier just to do a screen share of what you have on your screen and let everybody just watch that. If you do a screen share and you make that spotlighted so that it takes up everybody's entire screen, then it actually makes it easier for their computers to deal with all of the stuff coming at it. It doesn't try to process everybody's videos or everybody's faces. It only processes what you send out to it on the screen share. So sometimes the screen share for virtual tabletops, sometimes doing that is a whole lot easier than asking everybody to try and go into the virtual tabletop themselves. The downfall to that, though, is, of course, you now have to operate all of your players' tokens and so on and so forth. And so that can kind of get a little bit tricky if you're trying to reduce the amount of tech that you have to do too. If you're doing the screen share, you're doing it all. But if that's what's going to make it easier for your tech to work, it's probably worth it. Hey there, Critical Error. Yeah, looking for some players. So I wonder, I'm curious, which game did you come in from? I think you must have come in from. Let's get that chat up here so we can see everybody chatting in here too. We have a couple of games that we have been advertising for. So there was a Dragon of Icespire Peak game that was advertised, and then there was a Yawning Portal game that was advertised. We have for our new DMs. So, which one did you come from? And while you're coming in, let's carry on, I guess, too, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going over session zeros right now, and Yawning Portal, yeah. So, Critical, I'm going with. I was watching one of. Oh, there's some noise. Hang on for one moment, guys. Oh yeah, so I have a couple of moments that I have to step away for just a second because I got to go sign in at the building that I'm here at. So bear with me. Hey, Dak, good to see you, buddy. Glad to have you join us as well. Seems to me we have a whole bunch of people jumping in, and I am so happy about that. I am so sorry that I have to step away for a brief second. That was unexpected, but I'm going to go quickly sign into the building that I'm in here for security purposes so that, they don't release the dogs on me. I will be back imminently. I will be right back in, let's say, 39 seconds. That sounds reasonable. And then we can talk about Yawning Portal. We can talk about what Dak's going to do too. So, yeah. Yeah, all right, and we're back. Woof. That was a longer 39 seconds. Sorry, guys. Anyway, hi. So yeah, we have Dak, we have Critical. That's good to see you guys. So Dak is one of our new DMs. Just like 45 minutes ago joined the guild. Good to have you with us, buddy. And Critical is looking to join one of our games. Release the Badger. Yeah, those things are scary, especially those honey badgers. You don't want to be around those things. Anyway, so today we are talking about session zeros. And so because we've had Rogue join us, DM Rogue, DM Dynamite, and now DM Dak, all joining us, and they haven't necessarily, some of them have already been DMing for a while, but when you're DMing on an online game, things are different. Things are wildly different. So just kind of wrapped up the idea of the first thing that I do on my session zeros when you're doing online DMing And so you guys are in here now. You guys can tell me if there's anything else that you would have liked to have seen in each of these stages of the session 0 stuff that we do as well. So first one was the tech checks. I don't do a darned thing until I know I can hear everybody and that they can hear me. If they don't hear me and I can't hear them, nobody's going to like this game. And so that's why I talk about that tech check first. And so the first one has to be the mic check. And sometimes you have to check the noise suppression filters or the noise gates that you have on your software just to make sure that everything's being heard, and I will take the time. I will be like, hey, Dak, go ahead and say something intelligent or something completely unintelligent, your choice. And then I'll listen to it, and everybody else who's in the call will listen, and we'll say, can you hear him okay? Yeah, good. Okay, next person, critical, check it out. And make sure that everybody can hear you, because if you can't be heard, no point in trying to get the game going yet. And I will take the time it takes. Like if it takes me 45 minutes to get that tech working, it is so crucial to get that tech working. I also try to ask all my people to, double check before they join the call, but tech happens. So we try to help them out as we go along. And then the screen share stuff. So sometimes when people are on calls, whether they're using video or just audio, doesn't really matter, especially if their computer's not very strong or if their video is really laggy. Yeah, I like that one too, Dak. Actually, it's a really good call. Hey, tell us where you're from, what's your name, or what you want us to call you, what's your pronouns. All of those things, use that as your mic check. I love that a lot. That's a great point there. But let's say they're having all those, the internet isn't working all that great, then screen share is sometimes the way to go. Because if their internet's not working all that great and you ask them to log into Roll20 or Foundry or Astral or whatever virtual tabletop you're using, it might bog their system down so much that they hate it. And then they don't want to play with you. And it's not your fault, it's the tech. And we want to get the tech out of the way. So sometimes the easiest way to do it is to say, okay, fine, don't log into Roll20. I'll just screen share, and you can see all the things here. Now, if that's something you want to do, you want to make sure you try to screen share them to them something that doesn't look like what the DM is supposed to see. So you'll have to make sure you join as a player as opposed to joining as the GM. So, just watch out for that. But if you can get away with doing that, sometimes that's the easiest way to go. Yeah, so there we go. That's your tech check. Anything else that you guys can think of that you could use for that you would want to be double checking on in terms of your technology? Make sure it's not a barrier to fun. Go ahead and throw it in the chat. The next section that I have is a script introduction. So I give all my DMs a script that I use, and I also am fully aware that every time I use the script, I deviate from it. But it's a really great starting point. So this script, I'm going to actually put this script up probably in the Discord somewhere along the way. Feel free to join, by the way, if you want. You can type in, you could just go to discord.windyjdnd.com. It's automatically gives you the invite, which is kind of nice. But this script I find is quite helpful. And so this is what it says. So I'll just kind of go through it. I would like to introduce myself to you as your dungeon master. I am DM WindyJ, and it is my responsibility to implement a storyline for you in a fun and engaging way. Oh, wow, do I ever sound canned. Whatever. I have this script. It's helpful, but I also don't like reading it because I sound so fake. But I do. I mean, it's a really great cue card for me nonetheless. So my mantra is that D&D is supposed to be kind of an escape from reality sometimes, or an escape into creativity, but that's only possible if we're all having fun. So my script is geared towards talking about the very basics of the most basic feelings that we want to have and what the basic logistics we're going to have for the game. So as you can see here, that was the first chunk there, and if I carry on, if at any time you are not having fun or feeling uncomfortable, I want to encourage you to let me know. So you need to give your players a way of connecting with you in a slightly private way. Now, I've had it in the past where some DMs have given me little cards that say, or like they can flash cards that say, this is a subject of sensitivity for me, or it can be skip this, or it's going too slow. Could you please speed it up? Things like that. Um, if I and I've also had situations where my DMs didn't have all those tools, so they use what they call the finger method. They go like this: if you flash a 5 at the DM, then you're in really rough shape and something's really, really not right. If you're giving them a 3 and you just kind of do it very subtly, full on sleight of hand check to kind of demonstrate this, it just means that something's not quite right here, although I can't place it. Number one, like, or, give them the right number one, or hopefully not the other number one. But some DMs come up with those strategies. For me, in my Discord server, in the WindyJ D&D guild, we actually have a channel called the Cleric, because I'm totally geeky that way. But I put that Cleric channel in there so that if somebody had something they needed to discuss with me privately, they could open up a ticket from that Cleric channel, and it opens up a channel that only that person and the DM can see. And I haven't had a lot of people use it, thankfully. We don't seem to get into significantly challenging areas. Most of the time when I have somebody use that ticket is because they want to know, how would you rule on, what was the last one? How would you rule on using Spirit Guardians and casting the spell Blink? And how would that look? And I've had other situations where I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about my character's backstory. Those are usually the times that somebody uses the ticket, but I have had the situation where I had somebody open up a ticket and say, you were getting close to a topic that's kind of triggering to me. And we need to go through some healing on that then, obviously. So that's why we use the Cleric. But giving your players a way to be able to address issues in a private manner if they need to is never a bad idea. Or at least give you the indication that something ain't right, and then gives you the immediate heads up that you've got to steer to a different topic. Even if, and now for me, and you'll actually notice this in my script, I have that Cleric channel in there, but I also have it say, I also tend to say, if you have a problem with with what's going on in the game, I will stop the game. I will say, let's just all take a bathroom break, and I will have a one-on-one conversation with that person, and we'll make sure that we get that issue solved like right now. Because if you can't get the issue solved quickly, then that person doesn't want to keep playing, and it makes it very challenging. So I have been known to do that, to just pause the game and say, nope, we got to deal with this, and then carry on. Safety is so important, and so we have to give them a chance to do that. And then once you set it up, once you have all of these strategies set up, the likelihood that somebody's going to have an issue is pretty low. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about that when I get later on here with the player safety and role-playing safety stuff too, but what all those things could possibly be that could come up, and you guys get to share all the weird crap you've had happen in your games too, that are just like, why did that person do that? That makes no sense. And yeah, maybe you've made a mistake. I know I've made a mistake. I have been a player who's made mistakes many a time, and so it's worth talking about how you can solve that in session zeros too. So chat, let's carry on then. In my script introduction, I do say that the game is free. This is mostly just for my own purposes. I have bought a lot of stuff, and I'm sharing it with a lot of people. It costs. Mind you, to be perfectly honest, when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, it's actually one of the lowest cost great habits that you could possibly have. D&D rules, because you could spend $200 on books, but after those $200 have been spent on books, you get so many hours of awesome entertainment out of it. So much better. Hey, how do I do that? How do I say your name? Valixion? Valix? I'm gonna go with Valix. Does that work, Valix? You tell me if I'm okay with that. You're gonna put in like your the way you want me to call you in the chat. Valley. I like it. Valley, you are it. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So, glad to have you in the chat. Appreciate that you're here. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Valley. Oof. All right. I'm gonna somewhere along I'm gonna call you Xeon, and sorry, because I jump around the usernames, but that's okay. If you call me weird things, I will not complain. Hey, look at that! I have a typo. Cool. Let's fix that typo. Hey, feedback. You got as a DM, you're always learning. You could be Matt Mercer, who is, for those of you who don't know who he is, he's the DM of Critical Role, or you could be like the most watched person on Twitch and still be a DM that's learning, and that's kind of cool, especially if you're if you actually enjoy the concept of learning. But the only way you can do that is if you're actually open to feedback. So if I have somebody tell me, when you did this, it made me feel this way, I gotta be ready to say, oh, I gotta do some adjustments. So gotta be open for that feedback. But at the same time, you're also DMing the game. You should not be expected by your players to know when they should have cast Bless to save somebody else's life. Yeah. Ooh. Expect the players to put stats into the lore. Okay, I'm going to ask you to explain that one a little bit further for me because I'm curious about what you're talking about with that. I feel like there's something deep going in there, and I kind of want to make sure I put that into this session, into this stream just a little bit. Gotta be something that there's got to be a story behind that, Val. There's got to be a story. Anyway, yeah, you don't really want to be the DM that says you should have cast Bless, or every other sentence kind of is. Are you really sure you want to do that? Usually when the DM says that, players should be like, no, what am I missing? But it shouldn't be your job to know what the player's characters are supposed to do. That's their job. And if they don't know, they should know that they have to ask and know that you're willing to answer those questions when they come and slow the game down enough to be able to do that. Have a Wanty Paladin that, due to poison and disease immunity, to consider medium rare chicken with wild mushrooms and a nightshade berry sauce. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, see, I'm trying to figure out how you would play that. You medium rare chicken with what? Ooh, yeah, it's kind of important that you're ready for that kind of stuff because somebody's going to come up with some wonky stuff like that. It's also kind of one of those things that makes D&D just so darned awesome that if you do have poison and disease immunity, does that count for infections like salmonella poisoning? As an example, just going to put that out there. You can actually, as a DM, say, you might have poison and you might have disease immunity, but that would still bother a snake. So let's roll a Constitution saving throw on that, and you can have some fun with those kinds of things, and just to make sure that you keep them in check, but still encourage them to try. Gotta let them try, right? But as I say, it's up to you to follow up with that. But those players got to know that in the first place. Obviously, that player knew about poison and disease immunity. And so that player did a really great thing and had a lot of fun with it. But if they asked you to know that stuff, yeah, you got too much stuff on your plate. You can't do that. So you got to be able to share that with them. Make sure that they know exactly when things are happening and what the logistics are. So I've got the game is always going to be there. Try to set a schedule for how long the sessions are going to go too. I have my personal sessions for my games going for 2 hours, mostly because that's what I can fit into my schedule. And it actually works out really well because after 2 hours, we do get a lot of storyline moved, but we also get that tantalizing feeling of, oh, I can't wait to finish this next week. I don't like going more than 4 hours. 4 hours is pushing our limits. I tend to say if you're going to go 4 hours, you got to give yourself a minimum 10-minute break in the middle of the game. when you run a soup kitchen and the party has to explain that no, the rival pantry is trying to kill your customers. The rival pantry isn't trying to kill you. So I'm curious about this. This rival pantry is obviously not a mimic of some sort, but that sounds like a very interesting setup. Okay, so one of the other things I put into my script here is if we're only missing one player, we'll probably still continue. That becomes a problem if your party is only made up of 4 players. Or even worse, less than that. Some parties that are only 3 players and you miss a player, yeah, you kind of have to call that session because you're not going to get a lot of stuff done without 33% of your party being there. So, but if you can get away with only 1 player missing, it's okay to do that. It's okay to also just say they're going to take the dodge action. And it's also okay to say, I am not going to play that person's character. It's not fair to that person who's created the character anyway. It's sometimes hard to advance the storyline in a way that doesn't ignore that character exists, but we also have to be aware that players have lives, and sometimes things get in the way of those lives, like health. Just saying. So we got to let them have those days away if they need it, but we also don't want to completely annihilate what their character would have done by our really bad role playing of their character. It's not fair to them. It's kind of actually almost a consent issue. Do I have consent to act on your behalf and speak on your behalf? It's hard to say. You should try to avoid doing that at all costs. So the dodge action's pretty okay, but you also don't want to leave that character behind in the storyline either. I have a guarantee. This is my favorite part here. When you're at session 0, people are like, I don't know if I really like this character. I'm going to try this, but something feels weird about this character. Yeah, easier when your world is a log on, log off, massively multiplayer online thing with a mystery affecting the real world. That is true. But if you have a chance to go through that's one of the benefits of Westmarch servers, in that you don't have to be involved in that particular encounter for it to work, or Westmarch games. But when you're actually trying to run a long campaign, that can sometimes become slightly challenging. So. Definitely easier when you've got lots more people involved and you can just kind of bring some people in and just do miniature encounters along the way kind of thing, like Westmarch servers do. That's one benefit for them. Okay, so the DM WindyJ guarantee. Here's how I do this. In session 0, they're not really sure how their characters are going to get along with each other, let alone how the player's actually going to enjoy their own personal characters. So there's lots of things that could go wrong. Lots of times I get players who like to say, I can fit whatever thing can happen. I see that this party has a barbarian, a ranger, a sorcerer, and a paladin. But I don't see, paladin's the only thing that does an awful lot of healing. So I'm going to choose to be the bard because I can add some more healing to this, or something to that effect. And so they try to fit the party. But even when they try to do that, sometimes there are certain pieces of the party or certain skills that the party needs that's missing. And I don't like handicapping parties because they just didn't quite get the right mix on day 1. That's not fair. So what I do is I do a 3-session guarantee. If you get something mixed up in your character that just doesn't seem to work, I give you almost full latitude. The only thing that I don't let people do is change what they roll for their statistics, because then they get the best. Then they're basically rolling with advantage for all their statistics, and then now we're talking about min-maxing and so on and so forth. And I'm not a big min-max fan. I prefer the creativity in the stories. Yeah, not every game is for you, and that's the thing. But we're talking about from the DM perspective. You're trying to make a game that's going to be comfortable for everybody. If you do have a player that says, you know what, thanks, this game wasn't quite for me, that's okay. The player should have that latitude to be able to say so. And sometimes that's true. And I've had a couple of people who've come into my game and say, you know what, WindyJ, you do some pretty fun stuff, but this just wasn't quite working out for me. And it could be a scheduling thing. It could be this is not what I thought the game was going to be thing. It's entirely up to the player to decide how they look at it. Your job is just to try to make it as fun as possible and make the story as interesting as possible. So, and Eric Cochra solving all of their problems just because they have the word cock in their name. Yeah, okay, sure, I get that. Maybe that's not the right group for you. If you think you're going to be a murder hobo and everybody else in the team decides that they actually like the idea of role playing, then that's obviously not the game for you, and that's fine. There could be the eventual development of something that nothing more than murder hobo games, and you could find a DM for that. I'm not likely to be that DM, but we might have another DM join the guild that could be that kind of person, and it's perfectly fine for you to do that. I like my role play. So I do a lot of I try to balance a little bit heavier on the role play side of things, while also not denying the opportunity for interesting encounters. Some of the games we play don't really let that happen too much. Like as an example, we could go with Wild Beyond the Witchlight. It's a very encounter. It doesn't have a lot of encounters. Let's put it that way. It's very roleplay intensive. But something like Sunken Citadel, it's all encounter. And so you kind of find the happy in between. But if it's all encounter, I like to try to allow some opportunity for roleplay in it anyway. So if you're anticipating being a murder hobo, you probably don't want this DM, but you might want one of the other DMs like Dax or Dak or Dynamite or maybe even Rogue. I'm not sure how they're going to run their games yet because they're all new. And I know that DM Vera does quite a nice little mix of both roleplay and encounters. So, found a goblin, tried to force feed it to make my friends, and then the party stabbed it. Yeah. So, that's a different kind of murder hobo. I think... Yeah, that gets really frustrating sometimes when you've got this really cool plan and you know that this is going to be a lot of fun later on in the game and they're like, nah. That's one of those safety things. We'll talk about that in a bit too. DM still gets veto power on some things. So like if I have a person say, you know what, I had this Druid Circle of Spores character and I want to turn them into a Dragon Scale sorcerer, into a Draconic Bloodline sorcerer, you're going to have to come up with a really good reason why that massive change is actually going to work, or else just start with a brand new character. So DM still gets a little bit of veto power over things. And what I say after the end of this WindyJ guarantee, you've done 3 sessions, now you're locked in. So you get 3 sessions to make things the way you want it to be, and then you're locked in. And then you have no choice. You kind of have to do some roleplay and actually develop a character, and that's where the roleplay side of things comes in. DMs, you got to talk about inspiration, because there are some DMs that don't use inspiration at all, and there are some DMs that use inspiration a lot, and almost make it so that you've min-maxed your party just because of the number of inspiration points you give. But you do need to talk a little bit about that. Inspiration can be a very good tool to encourage people to play the way that you expect, that you're hoping they do, or hoping they should. For example, I like to give DM inspiration for people who come up with really unique and fun ways of doing things, or funny things that they could have done, or actually outsmart me in some cases. If they outsmart me, that's an instant inspiration in my opinion. And so I'd like to try to use inspiration to encourage great gameplay. It's a reward for things that they've done really well. And so now in our guild, we also give guild inspiration. So if you've done something that's metagame kind of valuable, then we give guild inspiration as well. But in terms of your own game, you need to decide, are you going to give inspiration? And if you are, what is it going to take for them to get that inspiration? For me, they got to be creative. They got to play into their character's background and alignment and storyline. And sometimes just being funny or clever. That's all it takes. I try to not give more than 2 DM inspirations in a session, usually only 1, and sometimes not even that, because otherwise they're all expecting it. And it doesn't become as big of a reward when it actually happens. So I try to aim for just the right timings for those inspirations as well. And that goes for the base introduction that I go with. And then after that, we get into some deep conversation in my session 0. So that's my script. And I give this to all my DMs. And then I say, by the way, don't forget, you can change this. It's my script. Doesn't mean it has to be yours. Okay. Unique and fun ways of doing things, worthy of inspiration, comprehend language, and minor illusion make floating subtitles, but the subs are terrible. Yeah, okay. If I had a wizard conjure an illusion and put comprehend languages and basically create subtitles for everything that's happening around them, but put it into like Sylvan so that nobody understands them. Oh, that could be interesting. That could be. Oh man, I could see so many ways of that going wrong and right at the same time. That's kind of fun. That's a good one there, Val. Um, yeah. So that's my script introduction. Okay. The one thing I don't have in my script, and I might actually update, is experience and levels. And so there's a couple of ways that you can do experience. You can just go with standard experience points from when you beat a trap or kill a particular creature, or at least deal with a particular creature. That's one way of doing it, and then you could just have standard level ups. Sometimes it doesn't work for what you're wanting to do as a DM, and sometimes you're playing published campaigns that already have standards for how you get your level ups, which we would actually call oh gosh, what did I lost my mind. Lost my mind. Words gone. Words. What are words? But basically you have like campaign milestone. That's what it is. Milestone levels, level improvements, and they gotta know. Your players gotta know how you're going to do those. If you don't give them, the heads up in advance, then it's going to be very difficult for them to know what they're supposed to do in order to actually develop the way they want to. Give your Warforged an auto loot system, and watch as they ignore the dying party to bang on a locked treasure chest for. Very interesting character creations. Val, you have had either you've had some very interesting games, or you are the person who creates the very interesting games. I'm not sure which one it is. All right. But you got to make sure that they know how they can get up in levels. I personally prefer to go with standard experience, because then people already know a standard as to what they're going to be doing. But there are occasions where I add extra experience to something because they did something I wasn't expecting. Or they managed to skip an encounter altogether through really clever play. I'll give them the experience points for some of that anyway. Maybe not the whole amount of experience points, but I'll give them a good chunk for as a reward nonetheless. But you got to make sure you include that in your session 0 conversations. So let's talk player safety. So I separate player safety from roleplay safety. Player safety is actual in-person human beings contact and things that you can do as a human being to throw off the other human beings you're working with. Not the characters you're playing, or not how you're working with those characters, but actual one-on-ones. So as an example, if you have a desire to allow people to drink while you're playing, you should probably be open about that. Because if you come across a person who tends to imbibe a little much, and therefore it impacts their gameplay, or it impacts how they treat other people around them, then you need to be pretty clear about what those expectations are with consumption. It's not that you shouldn't allow alcohol consumption while somebody's playing. In fact, I don't know how you could possibly manage that when you're doing online games. That doesn't seem reasonable. But it is something that you should talk about nonetheless at the front of it, because if you know somebody's going to be, or if you mention it at the very outset, it's not likely going to happen as a major issue. So talking about those kinds of things, pronouns. I am very much all about making sure people feel comfortable using their own pronouns in a safe space, and D&D, everything about D&D should be a safe place to be able to do that. D&D has kind of developed into this. It didn't always start this way, but it certainly has developed very cleanly into a place where a variety of orientations and identities should be considered acceptable, especially considering if we're going to have goblins hanging out with elves, then maybe we should allow transgendered people to be hanging out with cisgendered people and not have any headbutts about it. So let's let our human beings in our games use the pronouns that they're supposed to use, or that they identify as he, she, z, them, whatever the case may be. Let them use it, and then also allow them to play that into their characters too. Hydrate, everybody, hydrate. If you're on watching me, everybody get a drink. That is true. And I've actually had one of those situations where a person playing Val, this is a really great one. I had a person who was playing a character. The player themselves identified as she, her, but the character identified as he, him. And it was actually even weirder yet, because actually the character was he, him, except that he was he, him undercover, and was actually she, her, posing as a he, him, being played by a person who is she, her. You're gonna make a mistake, guys. DMs, you're going to make a mistake with pronouns. It's gonna happen. The one thing you have to do, though, is own it when you do it, as in every other mistake you possibly make. Because you're not... While DMs are supposed to be, gods fear the DM, the DM can still make mistakes from time to time. You just own it, and you apologize, and you move on. Hopefully that's good. If you make it a lot, well, that's a different story altogether. I've actually started to learn to develop into my vocabulary simply they, them. I use they, them on all sorts of people all the time. And even though not everybody appreciates or identifies as they, them, they certainly understand and respect that I'm trying to approach them from a position of respect, because they, them is actually a pronoun that is used in respectful circumstances anyway. And it's even used in research circumstances. So it's kind of safe to try to default to that. But if you're not used to it, you got to practice it. I'm 41 years old. I did not grow up with they, them. I did not grow up with z, them. I didn't grow up with any of that stuff. So I've had to practice it, and I'm still going to make some mistakes from time to time. So be fair to yourself and allow those pronouns to happen, for sure. Pronouns. Talk about it. Absolutely talk about it with your players. Make sure that they know where you're coming from with regards to the use of pronouns. Make sure that you know what their pronouns are, and make sure that you also share with them your comfort level with how you're using them as well. If you're brand new to it, then you got to be open to it, and they're going to be open to helping you through that process too. Alcohol consumption, or anything else that could possibly make people kind of go wonky, that's fine. Allow it, but make sure that they're aware that it can't get in the way of the game, or else you'll have to have that really uncomfortable conversation that nobody really wants to have. And anything else that, now in the online circumstance, there's not a ton of things that can be on the interaction kind of side of things, but you do need to also discuss tone of voice. That you need to make sure that everybody who's playing is particularly aware that they are playing with people who can't see your face. And as a result of not being able to see your face, you can't always... Yeah, Dak, I totally agree with you. They end up getting more chaotic than is necessary. So why do that to yourself? Why allow that to happen? That being said, it's not like you can crawl through the webcam and take the pint away from them. So you got to try and curb that and be on the front of that. And if you talk about it at the outset, it's going to be less likely to happen anyway, because people are aware of it. Same thing with the tone of voice. If you talk about tone of voice at the outset, it's not going to be as big an issue because people are actually aware of it. But when you can't see each other's faces, you kind of have to go with tone of voice only. And if you're not good with tone of voice, if you're a very soft-spoken individual in the first place, or a very monotone speaking person in the first place, it's very difficult sometimes to understand are they trying to be sarcastic? Are they trying to be mean? Or are they just being really, really clever right now? Tough, right? totally tough. So sometimes just mentioning tone of voice, not a bad thing. What do you guys think? Is there anything else that we should probably include in terms of interpersonal relationships and player safety that you should talk about in a session 0? Drunk players make bad players. Dak, I feel like there's a story there, and I don't know if you're willing to share it, but I'm okay with it if you do. New anime idea. That time I got an intervention during D&D. Yeah, that would definitely provide some interesting content. But you know, when you end up playing with some of these players for as often as you do and as long as you do, you're going to create some pretty cool relationships over time. Yes, totally critical. You're absolutely true on that one. The I'm going to finish what I was saying first because it's kind of on point. One of my most interesting relationships and and one of the ones that I actually treasure more than I thought I could ever treasure an online relationship is my relationship with Sky Guy. So Sky Guy is actually another DM. He has his own Twitch channel. Feel free to check it out as you want. He's in our guild as well. He's playing as Bob Moss in the Sunken Citadel. So he's a fun guy. He's just this awesome dude that plays D&D and is really good at it. He's Dutch as well. And so I'm blessed that he actually knows English, and therefore we can actually connect. But he and I get along so well because of how much we played together. And we have a really great relationship. We kind of have a pretty good idea of what's going on in even our personal lives. Now, I would never have imagined 3 years ago saying that I have a decent friend in a dude from Holland, from the Netherlands. I would never expect that. But D&D did that. And D&D can do that if you nurture that safe space for players. But Critical's totally right. If you do have a person in your game that is causing somebody else challenges, every player needs to know they should feel comfortable coming to you and saying, something's up. Now, for my DMs, people who are in my guild, if you have a person in your guild or in your game who is just causing a little bit of interpersonal friction and you're not comfortable talking to them, then I do. And I try to work your way through that as well. Or I guide you into doing it first so it's a little bit more comfortable, so you have the tools you need. I am a high school music teacher. I have done all sorts of crazy interpersonal stuff before. I'm maybe not a certificated counselor by any stretch, but sometimes I probably feel like I should be. I can help you through it. That's something I can actually do, and that's one reason why I'm actually even doing the guild, is because I do have that skill set behind me. And so if you need me to get involved to help you deal with those relationships, I'm totally able to do that. Or if you just need me to get in more directly involved, I can totally do that, because everybody's got to have fun. And if there's one person that's not having fun, it's probably true that there's more than just that one that's not quite having fun. And you could fix it. It's very easily fixed. Just have the conversation. Dak. We went to a D&D club years ago that was mostly for kids, and my friend turned up. Oh, man. That is unfortunate. And of course, when they are attached to you outside of D&D and they make that kind of mistake, it is so embarrassing. I'm trying to think if I've ever experienced something like that myself. I don't think I have. I think I've been pretty lucky to not have that kind of situation happen. That sucks, man. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. But it's true. If somebody comes in without the idea of being in it for not just themselves, but everybody else in the game as well, then you're going to have problems. And so I include that. There you go. You're in it for everyone, not just you. Okay, apparently I'm going to have to skinny that. There we go. That's better. Cool. You're in it for everyone, not just you. And I actually put that a little bit up in here somewhere. I can't remember where I put that in my script. Where did I put that in my script? There we go. This is a free game. Donations as well. Okay, there we go. The only requirement is that we have fun, including me. So as the DM, you got to be having fun. If you're not having fun, then you got to fix it. Mm. Ooh, jeez, man. Well, and I don't think that's the kind of vocabulary that they're supposed to learn. Oop, frames, frames. How dare you, frames? Don't do that to me, frames. Oops. All right, we're back. Anyway, the yeah, it's those are probably not the words that those kids are supposed to learn at Dungeons and Dragons. They're probably supposed to learn words like dawn and doff, not variety of not safe for work terms. Um, oh, look at that. The Windy bot is telling me some funny things. Yeah, that. Oh, dungeons. Hey, Sky Guy. That's Dutch Dungeons right there. Sky Guy, you're hosting us. You're awesome, dude. Thanks, buddy. Hey, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. We were just talking about you. I think your ears are burning. I'm talking about how D&D can create some pretty cool relationships. You're that one for me because the West March campaign you started many moons ago. So yeah, kudos. Yeah, and you're playing it with us tomorrow. So, other thoughts for player safety. Thoughts for player safety. We talked about pronouns. We talked about making sure people are aware of alcohol and tone of voice. And I say alcohol, but it could just as easily be any other thing that can affect a person's attitude and awareness. It's tough to say that, but more often than not with D&D, from my experience, it's been alcohol. And I'm not going to encourage any illicit drugs by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm sure that could probably have an impact. Okay. Role-playing safety, I guess that's the next thing. So this is when you are playing a game where you're in a fictional world and you approach something that is potentially triggering for the in real life person doing it. So things like sexual encounters. And you got to have that conversation up front. Are you guys okay with relationships or romantic relationships? Because those can be very challenging for some people. If you've had bad experiences in that, it doesn't take much for those things to kind of get in the way. I'd say what's another one that has come up for me? I guess addictions. D&D gives you a place to be able to explore these challenging concepts from time to time, if your party is open and welcome to it. If they're not ready for it, then you can't shove it down their throats either. And so you need to have this conversation. And even it's just a question. How do you guys feel about the concept of potentially developing romantic relationships between characters? Being very clear that the characters must be separate from the in real life situations. If they happen to overlap, that's when things begin to go sideways just a little bit, because if people can't keep those delineations, those things separated really clearly, then a bad relationship in the game can develop into a bad relationship in real life, or vice versa. And so you have to be very careful about and have that conversation really openly. Same thing with addictions. What other things can you guys think of that might come up that could potentially be challenges? Yeah, agreed. Sky, you're totally right on that one. Having your relationships, your sexual encounters and romantic relationships between the player's characters and non-player characters, that gives you a lot more freedom to not have those issues come up with your in real life situations as well. Freedom isn't the right word, but that's okay. What are words anyway? I totally agree with that one, that if you wanted to explore the opportunity for somebody to have a romantic relationship, try it out with an NPC. Gore level, totally. Level of gore. I do like to get into some somewhat gory details. I don't get as strong. I'm pretty close to the same amount, I'm going to say, as I'm going to say Matt Mercer maybe level. He gets into some pretty dark stuff though. So I don't necessarily default to that, but that is a good one there. One of your players ended up dating the Black Staff of Waterdeep. Oh no, Kelvin, that's hilarious. I love all of that right now. That is brilliant. I'm getting messages here. Okay. The yeah. So, the gore level is a great one, though. Do you? And I like how you chose the levels that you could discuss there too, Val. That the idea of let's go with standard TV ratings like PG, PG-13, rated R. I demonstrably avoid X. I don't like that too much. Um, and when it comes right down to it, more often than not, my players end up going a little bit closer to PG-13 anyway. It's just where they seem to naturally go. You can go R, and there's some people who actually like to go into that R-rated stuff, but it's not necessary. Not to have fun. Not all the time. Yeah, that's actually really funny though. I'm trying to match because in the in-person game that I have in Waterdeep, Harbeck is my wizard, and some of my D&D guild members might recognize Harbeck the guild wizard. But Harbeck, I'm trying to imagine Harbeck the wizard, who and how they would interact with Blackstaff. I don't think that's gonna happen. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's interesting, Val. Um, so and I feel like those are kind of more one shot, one off kind of situations, as a like very niche challenges that could come up. And so one of the things you want to try and avoid in session 0 is getting into every single what if. That if you get into one of those what ifs, as the DM, you have every right to simply say, you know what, if we have one of those situations, let's deal with it when we come to those situations. So the idea of having a person become vegan because they know tree ants are sentient. Yeah, but you can still explore what that looks like, because since they're vegan, are they the kind of vegan that's going to be a party conflict because they want everybody else to become vegan as well? And how do you play through that? You can actually turn that into a really entertaining series of relationships between your characters. But you can also say, okay, don't push your luck. And it's okay for you to send a little quick message to, especially if you're online, it's easy to do. It's okay to send a quick little message saying, don't push it too far, please. And usually your players will be like, oh, right, I forgot, I'm acting a character, I am not actually the character. So, and sometimes that line can get a little fuzzy. I'm going to put that in there. Explain that what ifs. Here we go. What ifs will be addressed when they happen, as opposed to trying to say we're going to talk about every single what if that could happen in the middle of a session. Right. Any other big role-playing ideas that could possibly come up? Thanks, chat, by the way, for throwing some of these ideas in. That's really awesome. I'm glad that we've got you guys dumping in here, because we want to make every session 0 for every person. Awesome. If we come up with some more, then I will put them into my lovely little list. Okay, next bit of session 0, character creation. Chances are, by the time you've started session 0, not everybody's got their characters completely created yet. And so this is when you get a chance to take some time, say, okay, so do you have any questions about your characters? And this gives you a chance to also help those characters align a little bit with the setting that they're involved in. If they're set in Faerun, which are there deities that they're connected to? Are there communities that they're connected to? You can kind of help them determine that and discuss that. And the bonus here is that as a DM, now you're at the part of the conversation where you don't need to have all the answers. That chances are there are some other players who actually have some of those answers too, and they can become part of that conversation for everybody else too. And you can kind of basically just lead this group conversation that ends up creating and finishing, theoretically, all the characters that come up. I had in one of my campaigns, actually the last campaign that I started, the Sunken Citadel, we did our session 0, and I'd say probably about an hour was spent just kind of going over everybody's characters, and all of the characters were already made. We were just discussing background scenarios like Who's the Gods. And that was marginally, mostly because they were being set up in my own homebrewed setting of Olivos, as opposed to being set up in Faerun or Greyhawk or Eberron or one of the other very popular campaign settings, Sandria as the case may be. So that's where you can kind of jump into that too. Yeah, good call. Religion and politics. Let's put that into the roleplay safety stuff. Religion and politics. And as far as I'm concerned, religion and politics has, like in real life, religion and politics has absolutely no value in Dungeons and Dragons whatsoever. I could care less if you're conservative, liberal, communist, or anarchist. I really could care less what you are in real life. We're playing D&D now. And being clear about that at the very top of that, that's probably a good one. Yes, character creation. I like this. This is my version of things. Standard array is what I like, is my backup plan. I prefer to actually have us all roll, because we do actually get some unique characters when we allow some of the randomness to get involved there. Oh yeah, totally critical. If you've never played Roll20, then this is one of those things where we could actually get into the character creation. So let me take a step on that one, because that's really cool. That's totally I'm all up on that. That's fantastic. So character creation, I like to do roll for stats. I don't like point buy, because what it means is that everybody's the same. It kind of comes out with a balance. I like creativity. I like uniqueness, and so I do roll for stats instead. But I also understand that sometimes those stats end up horrible. And unless you're willing to do that, you shouldn't be forced to deal with horrible. And so what I end up doing instead is I say, you roll for stats first. And if you don't like the stats that you get from the rolls, then you can switch to standard array so that you know that you at least have some decent skills. You might not be min-maxed, but you aren't going to be... you're likely not to be overpowered. You're definitely not going to be underpowered. And that is what makes people seem to enjoy the game the most. So that's my strategy. I say roll your stats first. Standard array is my backup plan. If you happen to have a game where people are starting at a higher level, then you can decide. You need to be clear about how they can, if there's re-rolls allowed at all for hit dice. So, for example, or hit point dice. So, for example, many DMs, myself included, like to allow people to re-roll ones when they're leveling up. I say re-roll ones once. If you happen to roll 1 2 times in a row, you're destined to have that one this time. I'm sorry, just deal with it. But I at least let them re-roll it once. Otherwise, it's like halfling luck on every single time you level up. Okay, question though came from Critical, and I appreciate this so much. Do I want to put it here? Where should I put it? I should put it either in character creation, or I should put it in the tech check. Oh, I'm going to put it in the character creation, because chances are you're not really even talking about Roll20 until you're at this point in the game. So your VTT, whatever your VTT is, if you use Foundry, if you use Astral, I use Roll20, frankly, because that's where I bought all my content already, and so I'm probably just going to stay there forever. And I'm glad, because they're actually doing some improvements lately to it. So in this case, Roll20, as a DM, you might have to give an orientation, and that's okay. The biggest orientation thing that you need to get, and sometimes it's we're going to learn this as we're playing thing, but the very least you should do is show them how to get to the character sheets, how to use those character sheets, how to roll dice. Those are the basics that they absolutely need. And then a Roll20, how do you roll for initiative? By clicking on your token first. Those things need to be taught to your players. Even if they've already done Roll20, it's not a bad idea just to kind of do a fast breeze through. If you do have a new player, take your time with it. And chances are some of your experienced players are also going to say, hey, by the way, you could also try this, and you'll learn something out of it too. Every time I play D&D, I'm learning something new I didn't know beforehand. So take the time to teach them the virtual tabletop you're using. And of course, if you are dealing with somebody who's never played D&D at all, ever, then you might need to go through that as You might want to actually take that as even as an aside. Maybe have a separate session just with the very brand new players to D&D, just so that they understand every square is 5 feet. Um, your your perception is based on your wisdom, things like that, because they might not be. They'll look at those character sheets and they'll be like, this is certainly not a clue, and it'll scare them. Um, Right, Val, that's a really great point too. One of the things you want to talk about in your character creation, and I've already shared this with all. Sometimes I forget this because I put this right into my Discord, so everybody knows right off the top. What's the allowable source books, and that includes what races are allowed, what classes are allowed, what backgrounds are allowed, so on and so forth. So for me, I've got a lot of books available. And they're all basically the standard core content books. So like Player's Handbook, Xanthor's Guide, Tasha's Cauldron. Now Fizzbands is out, so I have that too. So I include that in my games. Um, Volo's Guide. I'm missing one. Sword Coast. I think I'm missing another one, but I have allow all of those things with some minor exceptions. If you're playing in the game of Olivos, there are some very specific rules that go around some of those classes. Like the Order of Scribes Wizard has some very specific rules. The Circle of the Moon Druids have some very specific rules, and so it's you need to be clear about what those rules are going to be at the outset, so that people, when they make those decisions to be those characters, they're not blindsided by something that you haven't allowed. Um, I also am highly aware of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything's alternate features, things like the custom lineage and the custom background. The nice thing about those is it allows people to create almost any race or any class that isn't in our published campaigns. For example, I have a miniature Warforged in one of our campaigns, and the miniature Warforged is it's definitely from the custom lineage, custom background stuff that's in Tasha's. It allowed me to kind of help create something for my own setting, but it doesn't always work for everything. So Dak, you say I like some of Tasha's, but not all of it. The yeah, well, and we'll talk about that in a second here too, Val. But the parts of Tasha's that you have to be careful of are those custom backgrounds and custom lineages, because people can use them to excess and make some really weird shit. So you want to be careful about that kind of stuff. And so if you're not sure, or if you're afraid that somebody's going to go all wonky on you, don't allow it. And if you're a DM in my guild, you can certainly say, yeah, you know what, Windy has all of these things, but we're not going to use Tasha's, or we're just not going to use the custom backgrounds and custom lineages from Tasha's, or we're not going to use the stuff from Fizzbands. And you're welcome to say that for your campaign, and that's perfectly fine. It's your game, right? It's totally your game. Rule number 1, do not fudge the dice. It makes it feel bad when you're halfling divination wizard with the lucky feat. oh, the rule for rolling ones. Yeah. So I also have some other things that I like to share, some other homebrewed things that I do. Discuss homebrew. For example, cat with night vision. I find that the cat stat block at not providing cat's night vision is absolutely ridiculous. They have night vision. They have, or sorry, I guess not night vision, dark vision, whatever. Language. That's one of my big homebrew things, but they are the alternate character features, like the custom background, custom lineage, that is specifically Tasha's, but I don't know how D&D Beyond handles it, because I honestly just, there's so much stuff inside D&D Beyond that I can't keep track of. It's easier for me to just keep track of it all in Roll20 and just be simple on that. But yeah, that's the Tasha's source book is where all that custom lineage stuff comes from. So discuss, yeah. So you could discuss some homebrew, like, do you have any unique classes that you've created? Do you have, It was in UA at one point in time, Dak. It is, but they did publish it. They did publish it into Tashes. UA, for those who are not familiar with that, that's Unearthed Arcana, which is kind of Wizards of the Coast's way of test playing different things before actually publishing it. And so it was from, and you can actually be very clear as well. If you don't want to allow things that are in Unearthed Arcana, then you don't have to. For example, there was, this is a couple years ago before the psionic stuff came out for rogues. There was a person who asked me if they could do the soul knife rogue from our Unearthed Arcana, and I was afraid of it. So I simply said no, because I'm not comfortable with it. And you're allowed to say that as a DM. Partly because I wasn't convinced that they test played it enough yet. But even if I didn't know that, then I probably still would have said no anyway, because the unknown can really mess a game up. My son is actually creating a new class called Dreamweaver, and we are in the process of test playing it, but I would never let anybody play that class until I was comfortable that it was actually going to be balanced with the rest of the other classes out there too. Yeah, there's a few things that are published that are broken. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Okay. Character backgrounds. Okay, so this is where things get a little bit different, though. I guess if there's anything else you guys think we should talk about in terms of character creation in the Session 0, feel free to share that off, too, for me. But character back... I am not paid to endorse this. I won't be paid to endorse this either. But it is off a DM's Guild, and I do have a few pieces of content on DM's Guild, like my DM Screen of Superior referencing and my Chronicle of Encounters. But this came off a DM's Guild as well. It's called Game Master's Book of Random Encounters. I love these Game Master's books. They have some major DM saving things in it. Lies, all lies. Anything is possible. The enlarge and reduce spell can really mess things. We actually had that. Oh gosh, that was my Stones of Faerun campaign, where I had a dwarf. No, it wasn't a dwarf. It was the druid. Actually, it was a drow druid that had wild shaped into a spider, and then it has 1 hit point, and it got smacked while it was in a 1-inch hole, and he got wedged into this 1-inch hole. It wasn't Thanos' rear end, but it probably felt like it. Whatever. Anyway, back to the story. Character background. So one of the challenges that come up with the character backgrounds, aside from setting-based stuff, so discuss how the characters fit into the setting. That's a big one, right? I should put the word wrap on here so we can see all these things. Huzzah. Okay, there we go. Discuss how the characters fit into the setting. And that takes time. And you might not get it all done even in Session 0, but you can at least get the conversation started. Oh yeah, alignments. That's a good call. Alignments. Do we allow evil? I'd say if you don't allow at least chaotic, you're going to have some problems. People do enjoy some of the chaos that comes out of D&D, and you got to allow it to happen. And anything that tells them that they can't do that, that's kind of tricky. I would say there are very select circumstances where I personally would allow evil characters in my campaigns. I would say that I would only allow an evil alignment if I knew that the part of the intentional story arc for that character was to shift alignments over time. So like the paladin, the redemption paladin might be a great evil character that is trying to pull themselves out of that. Yeah, and that's part of the homebrew stuff, I would say there, Val, is do you have guns? Do you have radio? What do you have in your campaign? And if you do have those things, how do they fit with all of the other rules? And you'll have to have some conversations about how that homebrew fits with the published. Are you also a raw person? Are you somebody who only likes to do homebrew? I'm going to put that in there first. Homebrew versus rules as written. and how much are you a rules as written person? For me, I'm actually pretty good for rules as written. I like to stick to the rules as written because everybody knows what to expect. And if I do have homebrew, I make sure it's publicly known. Um, Cola in Strixhaven. Yeah, totally. Oh man, I can imagine an Alan trying to drink that stuff. That would be a very interesting regurgitation anyway. But yeah, so that's a great point there, is how did the rules as written fit in? I take some time with the setting, especially if it's in a new setting like my own homebrewed Olivos, because even the pantheons are different. How the fitting of the setting, the pantheon, and even the timeline, as the case may sometimes be too. I know of a DM that is playing a game where they actually jump through timelines they've created. I'm not sure what the mechanics are that they've created, but they've basically been jumping back and forth thousands of years at a time, kind of thing. I don't think he really understands the concept of paradoxical time, but whatever. It's a game, and they're having fun, so you don't complain about a game where people are having fun. The other thing to mention inside of character backgrounds is, do you want to start your game where your characters know each other or not? And then arrows of total destruction. That was a big one, right, Sky? Sky, the Vorpal blade. Yeah. And then the Vorpal blade on somebody who can roll more nat 20s and things like that for some way, shape, or form, because of all the advantages they give themselves and things like that. Part of that is a DM error. If you allow that to happen, like we allowed that to happen, then, well, it's kind of on us. And so you kind of have to, then it's also on the DM to try to figure out a way of balancing that back off again. For example, my son is currently in a campaign. Yeah, right? The Vorpal sword is gone from all the campaigns. But my son is currently playing a campaign where he's a druid with a javelin of lightning, and apparently he's a little overpowered. So his DM has asked me, how do you deal with that? So much fun talking to other DMs about how to mess up with my son's characters. It's kind of fun that way. Anyway, but when you're starting your game, your characters, they either have to know each other or they don't, and you have to decide how that's going to happen. And if they don't know each other, how are you going to get them to meet each other? And now this is now kind of an outside of the discussion of a session 0, but if you have this conversation at the front, you either get to decide your characters know each other or your characters don't, or what do y'all want? What do the players want to have happen? Blue Dragon's call. Yeah. But if you want your characters, if you make the decision, then that makes things easy. You have enough time to kind of get yourself set up. But if you allow them to choose, then you got to be ready with some options. And so here are some of the let's talk about some options about how to get games started. How should characters begin? How should characters begin? Getting some notifications, just checking out those notifications. Hey, Critical Error in the Discord. Love it. Thank you very much. Glad to have you here. Yeah, we've done that too, actually, for them, but we've also found exceptionally positively charged monoliths that end up causing the javelin of lightning every time it's thrown to create an area of effect. We have fun with it. So how should characters start? So one of the obvious ones would be the trope of in a tavern. That's a wonderful D&D. And the reason why it is such a good trope is because it actually works a lot, even though you don't necessarily want it to. Another one that I'm going to be using is invited to the town master's birthday party, or something to that effect. And they're told you have to have a name tag. Please put your name tag on here, and so on and so forth. That's another way that you can get strangers to come to the same place at the very least, and then see if you can get things going that way. What other ways can you guys think of? Throw them at me. Truth. Yeah, all of that about the javelin. Yeah, it's been interesting talking about some of those rule mechanics. Oh, I like that. Val, that's kind of fun. You leave the tavern. Nope, never mind. You're coming in the back door. Working for the same person. That's right. You have a patron, a group patron, hires all of you. How does the group patron know who you are? That's the other thing you kind of have to fill in the gaps on that. Other ways that people can meet. And you have to also think about how do you meet people in real life, for that matter, too. Drinking game is always good. It's in a tavern. I really appreciate that, Sky. Drinking games. I like dart games as well, or gambling at the very start of a campaign. And they gamble with like coppers and silvers, and that's fine. But these are these little bonding moments where people actually get a chance to compete, or something like that. Bartender Bob, back in. And of course, if you've got a setting already set up, so like DM Rogue's going to be starting Dragon of Icespire Peak and Phandalin, so obviously the barkeep is going to be Toblin. If you're starting in Oakhurst for the what's that for the Sunless Citadel, then you have I forget what the tavern owner's name is there, but you can use those as well. Mysterious letters are always fun. Mysterious letters. Bounty wall. Yeah. Bounty wall or job postings that everybody can get access to. You wake up tied together with a man in a mask on a TV asking you to play a game. Yeah. Refugees. Ooh, I like that one. That's a good idea. Starting from jail. Start from jail. What did y'all do to get yourselves in jail then? And that's the flip gear. And you don't have to always have the answers, DMs. You really don't. If you want to say, I'm going to have everybody start from jail. What did you do to get in jail? What did you do to get into jail? That's actually a lot of fun. And even if you have somebody who is lawfully good, they can still come up with an interesting way or interesting reason for them to get into jail. And you got to do it. You got to, that's a really great one there. I appreciate that one a lot. But if you do, now let's just say these are for the ideas where characters don't know each other, right? What about how to get it so that you can have characters who do know each other? When you have players who've never met before. Isn't a D&D jail a dungeon? It could be. It could be. I find that most of the jails that I have available to me are like just a locked room in the back of the townmaster's hall, or a rectory, or something to that effect. But here's kind of one thing that I like, and so this is why I was bringing up this book earlier on, this lovely book from the DM's Guild, called The Game Master's Book of Random Encounters. In the back of it, you've got a table, a 100, that you just roll a percentile dice, and it comes up with a variety of different ideas for creation. So here's what I'm going to get you guys to do. You're all in the chat. Let's do this just for stinks and giggles. I am going to get you guys to do some rolling. I haven't had a chance to do this yet for a long time, so let's get this to happen. So here's what I want you to do. Huzzah. Let's do this. So in the chat, I'm going to get you a couple of you guys to roll for me. As you see it up above my head there, the rolled 1d100. Put the exclamation mark in front of it. And hopefully, this is also kind of a test run because I set the bot up to do it, and hopefully it does it right. Let's see what happens when you roll for 1d100. Oof. Come on, bot. Work with me here. And if that's not going to work for me, then I'm going to have to scream and shout. I wonder if it's only going to happen if you're a follower. Oof. Oof. At which point I would, of course, intelligently ask you to follow and then see if we can make some adjustments there. But let's see. Let's see if I can get this to happen. Maybe it's just getting mad at me because I'm trying stuff out here. Oh, you're telling me things. Your bot is a potato. Yeah. There, thanks. Hey, thanks, Dak. Not that I, forced you into it or anything, but I appreciate that all the same. Appreciate it a lot. Yeah, cough, cough. You definitely got it. Well, then if you want, and if you happen to be in the Discord, you can go to the Natural 4 channel, and you can also roll that in there too. But weirdness that it's not working. Dak, now that you're following, why don't you throw that roll and see if that makes the difference? I'm going to try it myself while we're at it. Because, we got to test things out. They're supposed to work. Nope. Bot's decided he's going to go for a coffee break. And screw you, Bot. I'll have to fix you later. Or maybe I can try and fix you now. What do you think? Yeah. Let's try that. Let's see if we can get this bot to do the thing. Nope. No dice. Let's find out why. Maybe I need to mod him again. Yeah. I don't know why he's not working. Alright, fine. Well, he's picking and choosing what he's doing, so let's see if I can... Maybe I just didn't make the command properly or something. Roll 1d100. It's supposed to do the working. Alright, well, let's try something different. Yeah, no problem, buddy. So glad to have you back in here, Sky. Appreciate it so much. Let's see here. Does somebody... let's go and roll this in. I'm going to roll in the Discord instead. And let's see what happens. So I got a 35 in the Discord. So let's see here. First person to roll was Val. So Val, and the second person to roll was Critical. So if you guys were starting up a game with me, and I was using this 100 percentile table, then this table would give me an idea as to how your characters could potentially know each other. And according to 35, that you you guys are both traveling fans of the same bard who have both run out of your narcotics. And so this is the kind of stuff that comes up out of this lovely table. And you can mix and match things as much as you like as well. So that bothers me that command isn't working. So I might just have to make my own bot or something to that effect, get it to fix. But yeah, that sucked. That's going to bother me now. Why are you not working? Everybody should be able to do this. Oh. Is it because of... the cooldown? Nah, that can't happen. That can't be the reason why. I don't get it, and I'm bothered by it, and I'm gonna just try a couple other things here. It is a cool table, and so let's just try something else out. Let's do one more roll here. I'm gonna try roll 1d20, because that should work for sure. And no, because I test drove that one, and that definitely worked. So WindyJ bot, you suck. I'll fix you later. I'll just do it in the Discord instead. So let's just say that Dak and Sky, who's lurking now, I rolled a 93 this time in the Discord, and so in this case, if using this table, I could say that your two characters are professional grapplers who can't stop. No, hang on, that's not it. Who have 3 catchphrases each, and so your characters would have to use to create their own catchphrases, of course. So it's that kind of a table can be very useful. Of course, this is just one table out of a book of something like 500 random encounters that a DM can use. So very useful tool. And you can come up with, I'm sure you can create your own as well. I pity the fool. Oh, yeah. Their own catchphrases, though. I don't know if Mr. T would appreciate... Oh, whatever. It's your game. So, if you don't know those, then having a roll table for characters who should know each other. Sometimes a roll table helps determine relationships. And so in my server, what we're going to do for all of our new games is we're going to roll that table out for people who actually are going to have characters that are supposed to know each other and help them develop reasons. And you, of course, don't have to take what the rules say. Just because the role happens that way doesn't mean it's the right fit for your characters. For example, if you have two wizards who are supposed to be grapplers, that's kind of weird. So you could say, nah, I'm going to pass on that role. Let's try again if you wanted to. That's the nice thing with the tables. Ooh, that's a good one. That's actually a really good one. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I'm sure would appreciate that. Very nice. Okay. And then getting into your play. And with your session zeros, you should not feel as though there is the absolute requirement that you play. You can just spend the time getting people comfortable with each other. That's why they call it a session 0. Session 1 is when you're supposed to actually start playing. But with your session 0, if you've got all these lovely things covered, I think you're going to have a really fantastic campaign. So first, your tech check. Do a script, because it's kind of a good starting point and gets people's thoughts flowing about what your game is supposed to look and sound like. Talk about your experience and your levels and how they're going to level up. Talk about your safety and your pronouns and tone of voice, and the main point that you're in it for everyone, not just you, so there's no spotlight hogs. Talk about some of the things that can cause triggers in your characters. They may come up with things that you may have never considered before. For example, if you've had abandonment issues from parents or something like that, then that can be very touchy subject if it comes up in your game, so you got to be very careful about that. And it could be one of those cases where your players say, you know, if you just give me a warning, this could possibly come up. That's good enough for me. I can just mentally prepare for it. That's good too. Helping them finish creating their characters so that when you are ready to play, just go straight into it. And then your character backgrounds and spending some time so that the people can actually connect, so the players can actually connect with their characters so that they can more relevantly play them. And then go ahead and don't expect to get very far when you're playing. In fact, I would probably only, if I was playing, if I actually got to the point where I felt comfortable playing in my session 0, I really only would just have them start in that tavern and have some drinking games, or have them start in jail and figure out what they did to get there, whatever the case, and that's it. And then save the rest of it for session 1, where the real game, full tilt game, actually begins. That's it for what I had for plans today, and that was actually a little bit longer session than I intended, but that's okay. I don't mind. I'm going to open it up to the chat. Hey, chatters, do you have anything else that you think should be involved in that session 0 when you guys are getting things going? Addressing opening the setting for the actual game, maybe show the map or describe what is going on in the game world, or is that best in session 1? That kind of depends on the purpose. I would say for me and myself and I tend to do just the things that everybody in the world should know. For example, if you live on Earth, you should know there's North America, there's Australia, there's, you should know those general locations. You should know that there are a variety of different religions, like Judaism, Christianity, and that there is such a thing as pagan cultures and so on and so forth. Although I don't know if I'm a fan of the phrase pagan, but whatever. Those general concepts, what everybody should know, that's the stuff I would go over in session 0. So, for example, in my homebrewed setting, I would include things like everybody should know that there is basically one large continent that is really weirdly shaped. And that continent is known as Osawiran. And you should know that the biggest country in it is called Wesmia, and that they are basically a theological empire or theological country, and that you should know that if you don't worship that god, then you're probably going to get your butt smacked into a dungeon somewhere. And I would also indicate that, by the way, it's nice and warm here. It's not, you're subtropical, but you're kind of close. I would also mention here's where the big land masses and big water bodies are for Ogopogo Bay or the Wasting. The timer, what's the biggest city nearby that everybody should probably know about? It's called Claymouth. Is there any major wars that they would know about through the grapevine? So things like what's happening in the Kilfod Kaganet, things like that. I would mention those things. I would also be very careful to disclude things that haven't been revealed in the world yet. And there are things that are in that world of Olivos that nobody knows about yet. If somebody's trying to play a drow, then I would also be very clear about what drow comes from in the world, in the realm of Olivos, because how drow are treated in Faerun, wildly different than how drow are treated in Zandia, and wildly different again for how they're treated in Olivos. So being very clear about some of those overarching principles, that would be the stuff I would cover in session 0. As for showing them where they are in the world, again, that's kind of a question, because if you've got a barbarian with the intelligence of a gnat, they probably don't even know how to read a map, let alone understand what it's supposed to tell them. But there might be somebody who already has a map, at which point you can give it to them and they can reveal it as they want to. I try to avoid maps. Despite playing everything on Roll20, I actually like to do a lot of theater to the mind stuff first. And I don't like to pull out the maps until we're actually in an encounter where you need to see those distances and the environment and such. So, for example, my Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign, they started in a community called Roru. And yeah, Roru. It sounds like a Scooby-Doo thing, and I've already been told that. You don't have to tell me again. But in Roru, they aren't familiar with it. Every single one of the people who got to Roru have never seen it before. They know that it exists, but they didn't know what it looked like. And so they are just learning about it. I'm not going to give them a map, but I will give them a description of the architecture. I will give them a description of the economy and what kind of activities are happening. I do give in all of my games a little button for the DMs so that they can roll it and determine what the weather is like. So, kind of to help them truly immerse their players in the setting. So I click that weather button and it's going to tell me which way is the wind coming from. Is it blowing really a lot? Is there precipitation? How much is the temperature changed? Is it a big change or a little change? And then that way I can use that to kind of describe to the players, this is your world. What do you do with it? So I kind of pick and choose what I reveal, I guess. That was a really long answer, Dak, for your question. I pick and choose what I'm going to reveal. And it's based off of what I think they should already know, based on the fact that they've, lived, and then what they're about to find out. That's a good question. I should put that in here, though. Character gap back here. Reveal what they should know as common knowledge, like continents and major capitals or something like that. Describe what they see for the first time. So if they're in the middle of a jail cell, does the jail stink? Is there a hole for their excrement? Is there, or is it just really just some back room that's got the door locked and that's it? And is it a dirt floor? Does it smell? If you can get away, if you can actually have a checklist beside you that says what do they see, smell, taste, touch, hear, if you can get all of those things described, you got yourself a really great description for your setting. And actually, you know what? I will also include, and sometimes the 6th. What do they sense around them too? And you can actually let them figure out what that is with an insight check. Make that the first roll of the game if you wanted to. Or a perception check, as the case may be. And then have some fun with it. Rock on. Well, I think that covers it for today. And tomorrow, let's do some math. That is just under 14 hours, 13 and a half hours away. We're going to be back online, and we're going to go with the Sunken Citadel, which is set in Olivos. And the title of that session, I can already tell you what it is Take Me to Your Leader. Gets kind of interesting, I can tell you right now. It's They didn't take the path I expected them to, but what D&D player does. So, yeah, pleasure to have you guys with us. Thanks, Critical, for joining us. Thank you guys all. Critical, Dak, Val, Sky, missed somebody, I think. I don't know. But Critical, thank you guys for joining. Appreciate it. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the flip side. Oh, I am gonna see what about raiding somebody. Let's see who should we raid today. Who should we raid? Let's see here. Let's go and raid. I haven't raided anybody for a long time. Gonna take you guys over to. Let's take you guys over to Scarlequin today. Let's take you over there. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you guys later. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys, some of you guys tomorrow, perhaps. Woot.